Hello and welcome to another video. I'm Northern Soul Reaper and today I'm going to be taking a look at volume 2 of the original English light novel series The Lord of Goblins by Michael Werbrook and Hadi Bendaki. Moonquill, the publisher, were kind enough to reach out and provide me with this copy for review, so thank you very much for that. Let's just get right on with the video. Before we get into the review proper, I just want to talk a little bit about the covers of these volumes. So I was actually sent an additional copy of volume 1 and volume 2, and I noticed something different about the copy of volume 1 that I received. So this is volume 1 that I originally reviewed, and you can see here it just says The Lord of Goblins with the artwork. And then I was sent this copy of volume 1, which has quite different artwork, but it also has this little number 1 in the corner, and that kind of ties in with volume 2, so it kind of just gives it a little bit more of that light novel feel almost. You know, you kind of have the numbers on the front of the volume as well as on the spine, and it just seems to update the original book with a little bit of a nicer and cleaner cover, and obviously has the little number 1 in there just to kind of so you know that that's volume 1 when you look at the front. I'd like to do a giveaway for volume 1 if I can for the additional copy that I received. I'm not quite sure how to go about that yet, but just keep an eye on future videos and I'm sure I'll announce something when I've worked out the details. Volume 2 of The Lord of Goblins picks up right after the ending of the first volume, with Lev and his allies in unfamiliar territory after a failed expedition to gather haze crystals at the behest of their goblin overlords. The volume actually starts with a little bit of a recap which recounts things that happened in the first volume and gives you a little bit of a reminder of the world, which was actually quite welcome because a lot happened in the first book as well. There's also a glossary which kind of goes over the different characters and who they are, and this was also welcome because there's a lot of characters. Bit more on that later. At the beginning of this volume proper, Lev finds himself stood before a mysterious being, having been transported or dematerialized to perhaps some other plane of existence away from his allies. This being talks a lot about the civilization that came before, the history prior to the events of this book, and after a bit of a cryptic conversation, Lev is transported back to his current situation, which is on an unfamiliar level of the caverns with his allies after the expedition that they were on went a bit south and they were involved in some fairly hairy combat situations with the hivelings, the beasts that inhabit these levels of the caverns. What follows is Lev's journey back to the main bogey encampment and how he reacts to and capitalizes on some of the events that happen in the aftermath of this failed expedition. Lev sees things as a way to gain a little bit more power as a leader while also pushing back against their oppressors. I really enjoyed the story that played out during this volume, and what you get is quite a lot of politicking that goes on, and it's not quite the grand politics of some series, but you get these little kind of under the table deals between two tribal leaders where they're both trying to accomplish some goal, and it's how many troops can you lend to this and what would you give us in return for some troops and helping us fight this battle. So it's that cool kind of like on troops on the ground working things out on the battlefield stuff that goes on, and it was really interesting to read about and see how Lev deals with these different situations and these different tribal leaders, because having been transmigrated into another body he doesn't quite know the cultures yet, so it's a little bit of Lev trying to find his feet amongst these different tribal leaders and kind of garner their support for what's to come, and I really enjoyed that part of the story. As with the first volume, there are some chapters set during Lev's past life, and I actually found that I didn't mind these chapters as much as I did in the first volume. Part of that might be because I'd come to expect them, but I actually think that part of it is because the story being told in those chapters was really engaging and interesting, and I kind of wanted to know what was going on and what was going to happen in the next chapter. It was a kind of nice break from the goblin politics and the fights going on in that world, so it broke up the story quite nicely. They still feel counterintuitive to a light novel as a light novel reader, but I feel like they're kind of starting to win me round. So if you didn't enjoy those chapters or you thought they were a bit out of place, they're still a little bit out of place, but I found myself enjoying them a lot more than I did in the first volume. So there's just something to take note of there as well. This volume also continues with and expands upon Lev's relationship with Germ, the original inhabitant of the body which Lev was transmigrated into. Things here aren't quite the norm of what normally happens. Usually the new consciousness of, say, Lev, they go into the new body and completely destroy and eradicate the old consciousness, being Germ. Here though, Lev is able to compartmentalise and even converse with Germ at will. There's also an added complication that is thrown into the mix in this volume that I won't spoil, but it did lead to some truly funny moments in this volume. In addition to the chapters set from Lev's perspective and during his past life, we also get some chapters set from the perspective of some other characters, and the one that I enjoyed the most was from Gauze's perspective. She is Germ and Lev's sister. The addition of these chapters helps to flesh out those characters and build up the world, and I really think that the authors have succeeded here. I never really found myself thinking that I really wanted to know what was going on while Lev was away, but when I was presented with this side story, I really enjoyed it, and it seemed to fit perfectly within the volume, and it gave a really good alternate perspective of what was going on while Lev was away from the main camp. It also helps that some of the side characters are really well written and enjoyable to spend time with. However, what I will say is that whilst yes, indeed some of the side characters are enjoyable and well written, there's just too many of them. There are times when a character would be on the page and going through his actions and his motivations, and I will be struggling to remember who it is. You have characters like in Lev's gang, their lieutenants and their families, and then you have rival gangs and their families, and at times I just became disinterested in some of these characters because I just couldn't recall who they were. And that's without mentioning members of other tribes and other characters that we've met along the way that weren't just at the Bogey encampment as well. The cast of characters feels like it's gotten a little bloated at this point, and I did struggle at times to know who was who, so that's just something to note there. Another issue that I came across was the pacing of the novel. This story moved at quite an expedited pace, and it's difficult not to compare this to traditional light novels, but this is at its core a light novel, and what I found was that this story in this volume went through so many storylines and plot points that maybe would have been split across 2 or even 3 volumes in another series. And I can't help but feel like if the story was slowed down a little bit and the pacing was reeled back just a little bit, we would have gotten to know the characters more, and the side characters that I felt like I didn't know who they were or wasn't interested in their stories, maybe if we spent a bit more time with each of these characters, that kind of complaint would have been alleviated a little bit. It just goes quite quickly through the volume, and that might be the author's intent, that they want to get to certain plot points sooner, and that's totally up to them. I just found that it is quite a fast volume in that way. With all that out the way, that's not to say that I didn't enjoy this volume. In fact, I really enjoyed the story and where the characters are going, and I'm excited to see in future volumes where things progress from here. And I continue to enjoy the world building of this series. I particularly liked the addition of this precursor civilization, this time before what's going on now. I really enjoyed that. And I really liked seeing the different technological advancements that Lev was making in terms of warfare, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he and his gang or his army put these to use in future volumes as well. Now I just want to highlight the artwork in this series. So you have this beautiful cover of the volume, and once again this is done by Darkness Comics, and they do such a good job of bringing this series to life. The cover is particularly striking. I really like the composition and how it shows all the different characters and, you know, kind of gives hints at what's going to happen in the volume. But also, like any good light novel as well, there are certain pages throughout that feature some artwork, and they often come at, you know, major plot points in the volume, and it really helps to give it that real traditional light novel feel, and it brings some of those story elements to life. I really enjoy the artwork in this series, and I have to say that, you know, looking at this new volume 1 compared to the old volume 1, you can see how the artwork has progressed and become much more kind of alive and textured throughout, and it's kind of, there's a lot more going on rather than just a white background with a few characters on there. I really like this redesign of the first volume, and that's carried on into volume 2 as well. So the artwork is absolutely fantastic in this series as always, and it really helps bring the light novel to life. And that's pretty much it for today's review of Volume 2 of The Lord of Goblins. I really enjoyed this story. There were a few hang-ups that I had, as I've said, but none of them really hindered the enjoyment of the book too much. I think part of the criticism of it being too quick is because I like the world and I would like to spend more time there, so that's just a personal thing as well. But I really enjoyed this book, and if you liked the first volume, you can obviously pick up the second volume to go with. Like I say, I would like to do some sort of giveaway on Volume 1. I will try and organise that and kind of put a future video about that up as well. If you like this video, remember to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. There's lots of different light novel, manga and anime reviews on here, and I'm sure you can find something that you'll like amongst my videos. And yeah, subscribing really helps the channel out as well, and it shows me that you're enjoying what I'm doing. And as always, thank you to everyone who has supported the channel so far. It really means a lot to have that support. Well, that's pretty much it for today's video. So I've been Northern Soul Reaper, and until next time, goodbye.